Hey friends, welcome back to Bible Fun with the Duns. Today we read 1 Peter chapter 2 and it was day 4 of our Advent devotion.
That's right. So let's go ahead and get started. Do you remember when you were a little kid and you would get those pieces of paper that were where you would end up drawing something, but you had to start with the little dot up here that had a 1 beside it, and you'd have to look around it, dot to dot. And so you would go from dot number 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and you just kind of keep going. And at the end of the thing, you may not be a good artist at all, but once you had connected the dot, you had a fully formed picture. I need you to understand what's happening with our readings over this last week is almost like dot to dot. Some days you go, well, how did that connect with the one before it? But here's the deal. When you center all these things around Advent, they start to form the picture. Now just remember this. The word Advent means the coming, the appearing, the setting into place, the arrival. For believers, we're looking and using this season to look at and understand the arrival of Jesus. So let's go back to where we've been. We started out at creation. God created everything. We then went to from creation where everything was good and God literally says it is good. To then we went to the chaos of it because there was the fall. So that which is good ends up being that which is bad. And then we go to Isaiah and figure out that it actually got worse. Well, Advent is the story of God's plan to fix all of that and set things right. Now, when you go to 1 Peter chapter number 2, you'll notice some things that if things are being made right, you'll notice the difference. Like in verse 1. Therefore, laying aside all malice, all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and all evil speaking. So, listen, all of those actions, they belong to the former life. They don't belong to the life lived with Jesus. So, all of those things existed. Matter of fact, we read about all of those things yesterday in Isaiah when God was angry about them. He's saying here, we're not supposed to be living in that anymore because of Jesus. Now, he uses an analogy. An illustration, a little symbolism here to describe how important Jesus is to everything. In verse number 5, he's talking about Jesus being a stone, and then he goes into, in verse number 6, a prophecy of the Old Testament about Jesus being the cornerstone. So when walls were being built, the cornerstone was the one thing that kept everything kind of in line. Now, the individual stones did stack on to form the structure, but they were set in alignment with the cornerstone.
The best illustration, I've never understood this until I got to Israel. And we were standing in an archway, and you see they stacked the rocks up, and they started curving because it was a curve over your head, and the cornerstone was that last stone put in, almost like a puzzle piece. And it made all the pressure of the rocks lean on that one rock, and it held everything together. And I needed that picture to fully understand this scripture.
So all of our lives now lean on Jesus. Okay? He's the capstone. And in the foundation of a building, he's the cornerstone that sets everything up. If you get out of alignment with the cornerstone, the whole thing's gonna be not a good fit. When you read through this, you're finding out that Jesus is the cornerstone. Now, here's the difference. You didn't read this because it was in chapter 1, but in chapter 1 it talked about things like our flesh being like grass. It's here today, gone tomorrow, it grows, but then it's gone. So it says our flesh is like grass. But then here it's talking about stones. Well, that we are stones. So compare stones in chapter 1 or chapter 2 with grass in chapter 1. Grass comes and goes, but stones last. When we come to Christ, when we come to Jesus, we're transformed and we're made new. We're made out of new stuff, enduring stuff, lasting stuff. Why? The wages of sin is death. That's where Genesis was taking us, to death, because we fell. But when Jesus came along, he gave us everlasting life. Now, when he creates us then, it says in verse 9, look at it. But you are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, his own special people, that you may proclaim the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. So Jesus has created a new people. The first people in Genesis were of Adam and Eve. And they separated over the world, and they went from there, especially after the flood. The nations began to disperse, and they were made distinct by race and religion, location and culture. But Jesus makes a kingdom out of new people who are only defined by their relationship with him. And so we are not defined based on who we are, but on whose we are. We belong to him. Now, what that means is these stones are building a home. This new people were bound together with each other and with Jesus. Home. Home is now different. Now, our Advent book says this. It says, when Adam and Eve sinned, they were banished from the Garden of Eden. More significantly, they were driven out of the direct presence of God. This forced migration, this forced migration away from the protection and provision of God meant that they became exiles. Man was not created to live outside the garden and outside the presence of God. He was displaced and misplaced. Man was no longer at home. Jesus came into the world because we were not at home, displaced from home, in order to bring us home. All of this, listen, the stone which the builders rejected has become the chief cornerstone. The chief cornerstone of what? Home. This is all about why Jesus came. From creation to fall to the downward spiral of sin, for God to have a place now to bring us home. One of my favorite verses in the Bible comes from John 14. He said, "Let not your heart be troubled. If you believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. Now behold, I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go to prepare a place for you, I will come back and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also." So the first Advent was when Jesus showed up at Bethlehem. The second Advent is when Jesus shows back up here to get us and take us home. Keep reading. We love Advent. Bye.
Bye.